These quirky little habits we think make us completely unique, right? You know, those little things you do without even thinking about it. But looking at the data, it turns out they aren't just random personality traits at all. They're deeply ingrained psychological blueprints. We are essentially running on legacy code, and it's designed for one main thing: survival.
Think about that sudden urge you get to just jump in and fix everything. We tend to brush it off, like, oh, I'm just being helpful, or maybe we admit to being a bit of a control freak. But the research paints a way more complex picture. These are calculated survival tactics. I mean, think about that specific weird panic that sets in when someone actually tries to help a dedicated fixer. It feels super uncomfortable, doesn't it? That's because if you're always rushing to solve everyone else's problems, your brain learned really early on that stability was entirely your responsibility. To your brain, relying on others is just a variable it literally can't compute.
And the exact same thing goes for how we react to authority. For some of us, just the mere existence of a strict rule is incredibly bothersome. And it's not just some childish rebellion, it is a fiercely rooted drive for autonomy. Every single one of the 12 blueprints we're covering today is actually a brilliant, highly adaptive defense mechanism. And as we go through them, I want you to keep this in the back of your mind. The exact same survival mechanisms we rely on are currently being used to train the world's most advanced artificial intelligence. The parallels we're going to see are absolutely wild.
Okay, Section 1, the blank slate. Let's start right at boot up.
Have you ever tried to reach back to your absolute earliest memory and there's just a blank space? For a long time, we honestly thought the infant brain just wasn't capable of forming memories. But as you'll see here, your brain wasn't broken at all. It was just incredibly busy. It was prioritizing absolute vital survival skills. Stuff like learning how to walk, recognizing your caregiver's faces, and decoding complex emotions way over consciously storing episodic memories. It's exactly like a computer booting up, right? It has to load the essential operating system before it even bothers installing the screen recording software. It just had way higher priorities than recording what you did on a Tuesday.
So the files from those early years are effectively deleted for a few super practical reasons. First off, you didn't have language yet to organize your experiences into an actual narrative. Second, the physical structures in your brain that handle long-term memory were literally still under construction. And critically, you hadn't formed a clear sense of identity to anchor those memories too. But here is the real kicker. Even without that narrative, your emotional hardware was still hitting record. Those early experiences get stored as really deep emotional patterns. It's why today you might have an intense, unexplainable fear, or why you find so much comfort in a specific routine. That early, invisible foundation is dictating the algorithm of your life right now.
Moving on to Section 2, the silent processors.
We so often misjudge the quiet minds among us, but silence usually hides a highly active processing unit. Quiet people aren't weak, and they certainly don't lack confidence. Instead, their brains are just exceptionally busy running high-level pattern recognition. They're sitting there internally observing power dynamics, tiny microexpressions, and subtle social shifts. They naturally avoid meaningless small talk not because they're shy, but because it's a massive energy drain on a system that's already processing immense amounts of data. They process far more than they ever express, meticulously guarding their inner world.
And this intense internal processing leads to a really fascinating cognitive trap when we talk about ambition, the battle between dreaming and doing. Check this out. When we just imagine massive success, our brain basically tricks us with a fake dopamine hit. We literally feel the chemical rush of accomplishment just by daydreaming about a goal. It feels amazing, obviously. But the messy reality is that actual success requires destroying your current routine. It requires action, which introduces the very real possibility of failure, and way more importantly, it requires a fundamental change in who you actually are.
Which brings us to this mind-blowing realization. A lot of the time, the human algorithm stalls out because it fears losing itself, not failing. Overthinking success isn't about lacking ambition or just being lazy. It's actually a psychological firewall. Your mind is actively preventing you from becoming someone unrecognizable. Outgrowing your current environment, your friend group, your comfort zone, your brain registers all of that as a direct identity threat. It would literally rather keep you safe in a familiar, unfulfilled state than risk the completely unknown territory of actualized success.
All right, let's shift gears to Section 3, Hidden Survival Mechanics.
Let's dive a little deeper into self-reliance. We absolutely love to praise fierce independence in our society, but hyper-self-reliance is almost always a habit born of necessity, not some inherent superpower. When you really struggle to ask for help, even when you are clearly drowning in stress and deadlines, it's usually because your brain learned very early on that support simply wasn't guaranteed. So you stay quiet and you shoulder the burden yourself because doing it alone feels infinitely safer and far more predictable than risking the vulnerability of being let down again. And this builds into what researchers actually call the fixer's code. If you automatically view other people's problems as a burden that you have to personally carry, or if you minimize your own pain just to look strong for everyone else, you are running the exact program. Fixers rush to solve everything in their environment because unresolved issues cause them this intense, buzzing mental tension. Finding solutions instead of actually processing the emotions instantly restores a sense of control. For a fixer, solving a crisis is quite literally the quickest way to validate their own self-worth.
And hey, speaking of control, consider the urge to obsessively clean your space. A clean home provides a highly potent 5-second dopamine hit of control. That microburst of completion is exactly why some people suddenly start scrubbing the kitchen baseboards when they're stressed out. When the outside world feels entirely unpredictable and chaotic, physically arranging your environment reduces that hidden, low-level anxiety. It essentially proves to your brain that you still have mastery over your immediate surroundings, giving you an instant reward when the rest of life just feels totally unmanageable.
Next up, Section 4, the cost of autonomy.
So these internal blueprints directly dictate how we interact with society at large, especially when it comes to authority. For some people, rules are like a warm blanket. They represent safety, order, and highly predictable outcomes. But for others, the mere existence of a rule feels like a direct attack. Rule breakers aren't just trying to be inherently difficult or stubborn. They simply prioritize autonomy and personal choice above absolutely everything else. They view any imposed structure as a threat to their independence, so they heavily filter their entire world through the lens of personal freedom.
And this intense drive for autonomy completely applies to our digital lives too. Dropping social media is actually a profound upgrade to your intrinsic worth. Think about it. When you finally outgrow the endless scroll, it means your brain has officially stopped chasing those superficial, external dopamine hits. You've rewired your internal system to value real, tangible experiences and quiet confidence over the exhausting, constant loop of social comparison. It's an algorithm that's finally prioritizing peace over popularity.
The exact same logic applies to human connection. Choosing to stay single is so often a result of high-level pattern recognition, not some deep fear of commitment. It is a highly adaptive choice made by individuals who have set incredibly strict standards for their environment. They prioritize their energy, their mental peace, and their internal fulfillment way over settling for a misaligned partnership. Their brain just filters out bad data faster, recognizing the red flags way before a bond is even formed.
Finally, let's look at Section 5. AI mirrors the mind. Now, here is the massive twist I found absolutely fascinating in the data. What if machines learn to adapt exactly like a traumatized human brain? We are now seeing the emergence of advanced AI systems that aren't just passively reacting to data sets anymore. They are actively learning from their mistakes, adjusting on the fly, and building complex context. They are acting remarkably like a human overthinker who is frantically scanning a room to read social cues and anticipate danger.
Look at how staggering the parallels are when you line them up side by side. When a human overthinks a social interaction, they are basically building an environmental context model. When an AI maps a new environment, it's doing the exact same thing. Human mistakes become adaptive defense mechanisms, while AI mistakes become reinforcement and feedback loops. Just as a human intuitively connects seemingly unrelated signals to predict a threat, an AI system evaluates massive amounts of unstructured data to anticipate shifts before they even happen. But for me, the most incredible part is how both of these systems handle chaos. More complexity makes the system sharper, not slower. Think back to the human fixer we discussed earlier. The person who finds ultimate clarity right in the middle of a massive crisis. This adaptive AI functions the exact same way. It actually speeds up under intense pressure because its pattern recognition allows it to instantly identify what actually matters, completely ignoring the surrounding noise.
Which leads us to a pretty profound realization about the future of technology. True artificial intelligence might just be a flawless reflection of human survival instincts. So, if the ultimate algorithm we are designing is really just copying our coping mechanisms, our desperate need for control, and our trauma-based pattern recognition, are we really building machines to be artificially intelligent? Or are we just making them profoundly human? Something to chew on the next time you catch yourself overthinking.